Glasses of champagne slur, whilst openly recalling the most shameful moments of the groom's past to the bride's horrified family. But fortunately, Tom and I are only maybe 4 glasses, maybe 4 glasses in, but we're fun, but we're not too sweary. And try as we might, we couldn't actually unearth anything too embarrassing about Howard's past. He appears to have managed to live a relatively saintly existence without too many sordid events to regale you with today. Not so fast, Howard. I did say nothing too embarrassing. So, at this point, I'd like to hand over to Mr. Tom King, who will begin our short tour of the life of Mr. Howard Watson.
Thank you. On behalf of the bridesmaids, Matt and I'd like to thank Nina and Howard for asking us to be involved in this most important day of their lives. I know they both put a tremendous amount of effort into the planning of this wedding, and I can only hope that, apart from this speech, everything else exceeded their expectations. Now, when Matt and I were planning the stag and were thinking of what we're going to say today, we wrote down the things that sprang to mind most when we thought of Howard. Given we've both known him for the best part of 25 years, it was quite a long list. But probably at the top of the list, when we think of Howard, is his deep love of music. Now, I remember sitting in a bar with Howard a long time ago and found him in quite a reflective mood, pondering how he felt a strong connection to a favourite Rolling Stones lyric from Sympathy of the Devil, where Mick Jagger implores us to please allow me to introduce myself. I'm a man of wealth and taste. Now, I always thought this to be a very appropriate song for Howard, being a lifelong student of both theology and the riffs of Keith Richards. To this day, I hear this song and cannot help but picture Howard enjoying the other side of the story, admiring the compelling, mischievous figure of wealth and taste. This, of course, wasn't, however, the first time that I met the man. That would be a long time ago, somewhere in the early 90s, when he arrived amongst other similarly anxious and green youngsters at Wellington College. I would say that he was well groomed by his prep school, but he rolled up on his first day sporting what can only be described as a proto-mullet, so grooming was clearly not on the syllabus at Eagle House. To a bunch of schoolboys, the hair could very easily be a target for ridicule. However, it was swiftly put aside for admiration and respect when he revealed his earliest claim to fame, that he just enjoyed his 87th viewing of Empire Strikes Back and could quote the film word for word. Truly an astonishing achievement worthy of admiration in anyone, let alone a teenager on his first day of a new school. There then followed about 5 years of a love-hate relationship with Wellington College. Wellington loved to set the rules, Howard hated to follow them. Of course, during this period, I had the pleasure of getting to know him and building what has proved to be a lifelong friendship, as many others in this room did. In fact, we will be able to enjoy a little slice of Wellington history later on. I believe the school band have reformed and will shortly be playing the same set they played in 1992. So, the only thing that we're missing, of course, is the mullet. Whilst at Wellington, Howard was bitten by the travel bug. Now, I'm not talking about ski holidays or trips to Provence in the summer. Now, this is more the sort of travelling which involved escaping the attentions of your housemaster on a Saturday afternoon, weekday afternoon, midweek evening. And generally any time you shouldn't have been, in order to sneak out of school and take the back routes to Crowthorne Station, the gateway to the bright lights of Guildford and the relaxed attitudes of the bar staff there. Now, having gone AWOL one night, he and his co-conspirator, who shall remain nameless, set off a full-scale manhunt at school. Needless to say, this resulted in all parents being summoned to augment the full force of Wellington's rather overzealous search and rescue teams. Eventually, Howard was found and returned to school, disappointed that this most recent thwarting his desire to see the world, and was somewhat surprised at all the fuss this little jaunt had caused. It became clear that Howard and Wellington were never going to see eye to eye on this matter, and about this time they reached a mutual decision that Howard, who had perhaps best spent his sixth form at an alternative establishment, the best for all parties. So Howard and Wellington parted ways, and he found himself enrolling at Godalming College, whereupon he was destined to begin another lifelong friendship.
I remember the first time that I met Howard. It was the opening day of my career at Godalming College, and I was nervously attending my first theatre studies class. In walked this guy with a pierced ear, a black rose shirt, a shock of hair that would make a comb weep, and a swaggering self-confidence like he owned the place. I immediately thought to myself, is that hair for real, or has he got a cat on his head with his hackles permanently raised? But I also thought, I want to be friends with this guy. and friends we became. So we quickly identified that there were two main things with theatre studies that we had in common. Number one, we had both chosen theatre studies because we thought it would be a nice, easy A-level. We were both a little put out when we found out it actually required some work. Secondly, we both thought we had some acting chops. And we realised after about 2 weeks that we absolutely did not. With nothing like it, no chops, no chopless we were, really were. But our lack of talent did not hinder us too much. And we managed to get through the course and even managed to get away with writing, directing, starring and scoring in our own mini rock opera for our final assessment. If you ask Howard nicely, he'll even show you the video. Well, the bits with me in it anyway, the bits where I'm playing gangling teenager who can't act number 2. We bonded heavily over music. He introduced me to the Black Crowes and the Allman Brothers. I gave him Lynyrd Skynyrd and Pink Floyd. He gave me Country Joe and the Fish. I gave him Frank Zappa. Howard, of course, played guitar, and I had the desire to pick up the old six-string myself. When I confessed this, Howard advised me that he'd always seen me as a drummer, that I had kind of like natural rhythm, and it would be a shame to waste it. So, heeding his advice, we went straight out and bought a drum kit, and I have been drumming ever since. He did later confess that his advice was less, I see the drummer in you. It was more, all of my friends play guitar, I don't have any friends who play drums, you should play drums. After college came university in Birmingham, where Howard met another of his groomsmen, Matthew Johnson. Where are you, Matt? There you go. It was also Matt's first day at university, and his friends had warned him that on the first night there was almost certainly going to be some idiot slumped in the corner of a bedroom, drunk as a skunk, having been a little bit over-exuberant on the first night there. And ladies and gentlemen, Matthew was horrified when he suddenly realised that the prophecy was absolutely true, and in fact he was the idiot slumped in the room. And he was slumped in the corner of Howard's bedroom. Howard, always the gracious host, was not put out in the slightest, and another lifelong friendship was born.
Where Howard has been for the last 15 years. Matt and I have 1,001 more stories and anecdotes that we could share with you, but I'm sure as you are as keen as we are to get to the bar, we thought we'd share a few impressions of Howard that we gathered from the most reliable and trustworthy group associated to any wedding, the Stag Party. We asked the group a few questions about Howard, and many of the responses we received have been woven into the speech today, those that we can repeat. Thank you, gentlemen. Here are some responses we thought we would share with the wider group.
So now, our first question was, name Howard's favourite band. The answers weren't too surprising. The Allman Brothers, Led Zeppelin, Guns N' Roses, Dr. John, pretty much anything with a crow in it. Black Crows, Old Crow Medicine Show, presumably Cheryl, I don't know, maybe Counting Crows, I don't know. Interestingly, our second question was, name Howard's favourite band, his dirty secret. And the responses that we had a rather common trend. Almost universally, people responded with a litany of 90s girl bands, including a particular place for Bewitched, who, believe it or not, had a certain Mr. Watson, aged 20, as a fully fledged club member. There were Spice Girls, there was Pink, there was Christina Aguilera, Brittany, they all came out.
So next we asked the Gentleman Stag to share examples of when they made a plan with Howard that was a success. An amazingly high number started with Howard offering to go for a pint, a simple but favoured approach of his.
Not surprisingly, the answer to the next question, which was, and give us an example of a plan that went horribly wrong, also started with Howard saying, pint?
We asked the group, in the advent of a fire and a life or death dash from the house, what does Howard save? Pets, guitar, or his beer? More than one response described the balancing the pet and the beer on the guitar whilst on the run. One even indicated pouring the pint into the guitar, dropping in the terrapins, and floating them in the lager. But I'm not sure that's much of a rescue for any of them.
Our final question was, legendary frontman for Motley Crue, Nikki Sixx, turns up at the stag do. After sinking a swift bottle of liquor and sneaking a couple of groupies into the toilets, he struts over and sits down next to Howard. What advice does Nikki Sixx give? Well, in the interest of prolonging Howard and Nina's nascent marriage, I am not going to share all of the responses that we got. Guys, you have to be ashamed of yourselves. But I will share one nugget of advice that we received. I think it was from Mr. Nicky Josh Barton, 6. And the advice was, be good to your wife, yourself, and others. Enjoy your life. You are not rehearsing for a later gig. Well, who would have thought the writer of such hits as Girls, Girls, Girls and Slice of Your Pie could offer such sage wisdom? So at this point, I'm going to say my last few words before handing over to Tom. Every one of us in this room has been part of Howard's life. For many of us, Tom and myself included, we have had the honour of knowing Howard and calling him our dear friend for many, many years. We have grown up together, and I've seen Howard develop into the remarkable man that he is today. Many of you may have not had the opportunity to know him as long as I have, and I actually envy you that you will have that opportunity to get to know him, get to know the man that I do. I would like to thank you, Howard, for being my friend, for helping me through the difficult times and sharing my happy days. And I would like to thank you, Nina, for making my dear, dear friend complete. I've known Howard for most of my life, and I can hand on heart say I've never seen him as happy, fulfilled, and content as he has been since you came into his life. Thank you.
I want to say what a privilege it's been to be your best man. I couldn't wish for a better friend, and I'm sure I speak for all of us we're here when I say how proud we are of you, Howard. When I look around this room and see such a wealth of friends and your beautiful new wife, I'm now certain that Mick Jagger would agree you are unquestionably that man of wealth and taste. So it now gives me immense pleasure to invite you all to stand once more and raise your glasses and toast. To love, to laughter, to happily ever after, I give you Mr. and Mrs. Watson, Howard and Nina.